Question 1. Analysis of how a candidate for a pilot position at Hainan Airlines should ethically and procedurally manage the situation when they discover that the interviewer is a close personal friend from their flight training academy days, considering Hainan Airlines' commitment to fair hiring practices and aviation safety regulations. Option A. Withdraw from the application process for the pilot position without providing any explanation to Hainan Airlines. Option B. Proceed with the interview as scheduled, assuming the personal relationship will not influence professional judgment or the hiring decision. Option C. Immediately disclose the personal relationship to the hiring manager or designated HR representative and request guidance on how to proceed with the interview process. Option D. Conceal the personal relationship from the interviewer and all Hainan Airlines personnel involved in the hiring process. The correct answer is C. Immediately disclose the personal relationship to the hiring manager or designated HR representative and request guidance on how to proceed with the interview process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Hainan Airlines hiring assessment candidate by requiring them to apply regulatory principles to a practical situation involving potential conflicts of interest and adherence to company policy. The core difficulty lies in discerning the appropriate course of action when personal relationships might influence professional judgment, and understanding how to navigate this within the specific framework of Hainan Airlines' operational guidelines and relevant aviation regulations. Careful judgment is required to uphold ethical standards and ensure compliance, which are paramount in the aviation industry for safety and integrity. Correct approach involves a transparent and proactive disclosure of the relationship to the hiring manager or relevant HR department, coupled with a request for guidance on how to proceed. This aligns with principles of ethical conduct and good corporate governance, which are often codified in company policies and industry best practices. Specifically, aviation regulatory frameworks, while not directly dictating personal relationships, emphasize integrity, transparency, and the avoidance of conflicts of interest in all personnel matters. Hainan Airlines, like any reputable airline, would have internal policies designed to manage such situations, ensuring that hiring decisions are based solely on merit and suitability for the role, free from undue influence. This approach demonstrates professionalism, integrity, and a commitment to upholding the company's standards. An incorrect approach would be to conceal the relationship. This failure stems from a direct violation of ethical principles of honesty and transparency. It creates a hidden conflict of interest that could compromise the integrity of the hiring process and potentially lead to perceptions of favoritism, undermining trust within the organization. Furthermore, it could violate specific clauses within Hainan Airlines' employee handbook or code of conduct that mandate disclosure of potential conflicts. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with the application without any disclosure, assuming the relationship is insignificant. This is professionally unsound because it disregards the potential for perceived or actual bias. Even if the candidate believes they can remain objective, the appearance of impropriety can be damaging. Regulatory bodies and internal audit functions within airlines are vigilant about maintaining fair and impartial processes, and such an oversight could lead to serious repercussions, including the invalidation of the hiring decision and disciplinary action. A third incorrect approach is to withdraw from the application process without explanation. While this avoids a direct conflict, it is not the most constructive or professionally adept response. It misses an opportunity to demonstrate integrity through open communication and to understand how Hainan Airlines manages such situations. A more proactive and transparent approach, as outlined in the correct method, allows for a resolution that upholds both personal integrity and company policy. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of company policies regarding conflicts of interest and ethical conduct. When faced with a potential conflict, the first step is to identify it clearly. The next step is to consult relevant policies and guidelines. If ambiguity remains or the situation is sensitive, seeking advice from a supervisor, HR department, or ethics officer is crucial. Transparency and open communication are generally the most effective strategies for navigating these challenges, ensuring that decisions are made ethically and in compliance with all applicable regulations and company standards. Question 2. The efficiency study reveals that Hainan Airlines could significantly reduce aircraft turnaround time at its hubs by streamlining pre-flight checks and baggage handling procedures. However, Some proposed changes involve reducing the number of personnel involved in certain checks and altering the sequence of standard operational tasks, which approach best aligns with Hainan Airlines' commitment to safety and regulatory compliance under the framework of the Civil Aviation Administration of China (CAAC). Option A. Seek to interpret existing CAAC regulations in a manner that allows for the maximum flexibility in operational procedures to achieve the desired efficiency gains, even if it means a less stringent application of certain safety checks. Option B. Prioritize the implementation of all proposed changes that promise the greatest cost savings, assuming that existing safety protocols are sufficient to manage any minor deviations. Option C. Implement the changes incrementally, observing for any immediate safety concerns, and address them only if they become critical issues, without a formal pre-implementation risk analysis. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of each proposed change, identifying potential hazards, evaluating their likelihood and severity, and developing robust mitigation strategies in strict adherence to CAAC safety directives before implementation. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of each proposed change, identifying potential hazards, evaluating their likelihood and severity, and developing robust mitigation strategies in strict adherence to CAAC safety directives before implementation. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires Hainan Airlines to balance operational efficiency with the paramount importance of safety and regulatory compliance. The pressure to reduce costs and improve turnaround times can create a temptation to overlook or downplay potential risks. However, aviation is a highly regulated industry where safety is non-negotiable. Any decision that compromises safety, even for perceived efficiency gains, carries severe consequences, including potential accidents, loss of life, and significant legal and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that efficiency measures are implemented in a way that does not introduce unacceptable risks. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that prioritizes safety and adheres strictly to the Civil Aviation Administration of China (CAAC) regulations. This means systematically identifying potential hazards associated with the proposed changes, evaluating the likelihood and severity of associated risks, and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies. This approach is right because it directly addresses the core principle of aviation safety, mandated by CAAC regulations, which require operators to maintain the highest standards of safety in all aspects of their operations. It ensures that any efficiency gains are achieved without compromising the integrity of safety management systems and operational procedures. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without a thorough safety evaluation fails to meet CAAC regulatory requirements for safety management. This approach is ethically flawed as it prioritizes financial outcomes over the well-being of passengers and crew. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing changes based on anecdotal evidence or without consulting relevant safety personnel and regulatory guidelines ignores the systematic and evidence-based nature of risk management required by aviation authorities. This can lead to the introduction of unforeseen hazards and non-compliance with CAAC directives. A further incorrect approach that seeks to circumvent or interpret regulations loosely to achieve efficiency is fundamentally unacceptable. This demonstrates a disregard for the legal framework governing aviation safety and exposes Hainan Airlines to significant legal penalties and operational disruptions. Professionals in this situation should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape, CAAC regulations. They must then identify all potential risks associated with the proposed efficiency measures, quantify these risks where possible, and develop mitigation plans that are compliant with regulations and industry best practices. This process should involve cross-functional teams, including safety officers, operations personnel, and maintenance engineers, to ensure a holistic perspective. The ultimate decision must be based on whether the proposed changes can be implemented without compromising safety standards, as defined by CAAC. Question 3. Benchmark analysis indicates that Hainan Airlines is seeking to recruit experienced foreign pilots. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with the People's Republic of China's aviation regulatory framework and employment laws during the hiring process? Option A. Conducting a comprehensive review of the Civil Aviation Administration of China (CAAC) regulations for foreign pilot employment and PRC labor laws, ensuring all candidates meet these specific requirements before extending an offer. Option B. Adhering strictly to the pilot's country of origin's aviation licensing and employment standards, assuming they are equivalent to international best practices. Option C. Prioritizing the recruitment of pilots with extensive experience from reputable international airlines, with a secondary focus on verifying PRC-specific certifications post-hire. Option D. Utilizing a global recruitment agency that guarantees compliance with international labor standards, without specific verification of PRC aviation regulations. The correct answer is B. Adhering strictly to the pilot's country of origin's aviation licensing and employment standards, assuming they are equivalent to international best practices. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires Hainan Airlines hiring managers to navigate the complexities of international recruitment while adhering strictly to the People's Republic of China's PRC aviation regulations and employment laws. Misinterpreting or failing to comply with these specific legal frameworks can lead to significant legal repercussions, reputational damage, and operational disruptions. The core challenge lies in ensuring that the recruitment process for foreign pilots is both effective in securing qualified personnel and fully compliant with the stringent requirements set forth by the Civil Aviation Administration of China (CAAC) and relevant PRC labor laws. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and application of the PRC's regulations governing the employment of foreign nationals in aviation, including specific licensing, medical certification, and visa requirements as stipulated by the CAAC. This approach prioritizes legal compliance and operational safety by ensuring that all recruited foreign pilots meet the exact standards mandated by Chinese aviation authorities. It also necessitates adherence to PRC labor laws concerning contracts, working conditions, and termination for all employees, regardless of nationality. This is the most appropriate method because it directly addresses the legal and regulatory obligations of Hainan Airlines within its operating jurisdiction, minimizing risk and ensuring the integrity of its flight operations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the recruitment practices of the pilot's home country fails to acknowledge the extraterritorial application of PRC aviation law and employment standards. This would be a significant regulatory failure, as Hainan Airlines is bound by the laws of the PRC, not those of other nations, when operating within China. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed and cost efficiency over regulatory due diligence would also be professionally unacceptable. This overlooks the critical safety and legal implications of non-compliance, potentially leading to the hiring of unqualified individuals or the violation of labor laws, both of which carry severe penalties. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the governing legal and regulatory framework, in this case, PRC aviation law and labor law. This is followed by a comprehensive assessment of how these regulations apply to the specific recruitment situation. The next step involves consulting with legal counsel specializing in PRC aviation and employment law to ensure all aspects of the process are compliant. Finally, implementing a robust internal compliance checklist and training program for hiring managers is crucial to prevent future breaches. Question 4. Research into a potential new catering supplier for Hainan Airlines has raised concerns regarding allegations of substandard labor practices at the supplier's existing facilities. As a member of the procurement team, what is the most appropriate initial course of action to ensure Hainan Airlines upholds its commitment to ethical sourcing and regulatory compliance? Option A. Inform the supplier of the allegations and request they provide immediate proof of compliance without further investigation by Hainan Airlines. Option B. Proceed with the partnership as planned, assuming the allegations are unverified and focusing on the competitive pricing offered by the supplier. Option C. Initiate a thorough, independent investigation into the allegations, gathering evidence and consulting Hainan Airlines' ethical sourcing policy and relevant aviation industry guidelines before making any further decisions. Option D. Immediately halt all discussions with the supplier and seek an alternative, given the seriousness of the allegations. The correct answer is D. Immediately halt all discussions with the supplier and seek an alternative, given the seriousness of the allegations. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an employee of Hainan Airlines to navigate a situation where a potential business partner's practices might conflict with the airline's ethical standards and regulatory obligations. The core challenge lies in balancing the pursuit of business opportunities with the imperative to uphold integrity and comply with relevant laws and guidelines. Careful judgment is required to avoid compromising Hainan Airlines' reputation and legal standing. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective investigation into the allegations, adhering strictly to Hainan Airlines' internal policies and any applicable aviation regulations. This approach prioritizes due diligence and fact-finding before making any decisions. It aligns with the ethical principle of acting with integrity and the regulatory requirement for airlines to maintain high standards of corporate conduct and to report any potential breaches. By gathering comprehensive information, Hainan Airlines can make an informed decision that protects its interests and complies with its legal and ethical duties. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the allegations without proper investigation, especially if driven by a desire to secure the partnership quickly. This failure to investigate would violate the duty of care and potentially expose Hainan Airlines to risks associated with unethical or illegal activities of its partners. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately sever ties based on unsubstantiated rumors, without allowing for a fair process of inquiry. This could lead to missed business opportunities and potential legal repercussions if the allegations are unfounded. Finally, an approach that involves making assumptions or acting on incomplete information would be professionally unsound, as it bypasses the necessary steps for responsible decision-making and could lead to erroneous conclusions and actions. Professionals in similar situations should employ a structured decision-making framework. This framework typically involves 1. Identifying the issue and its potential impact. 2. Gathering all relevant facts and information through objective means. 3. Consulting internal policies, ethical guidelines, and applicable regulations. 4. Evaluating the risks and benefits of different courses of action. 5. Seeking advice from legal or compliance departments if necessary. 6. Making a reasoned decision based on the gathered evidence and established principles. 7. Documenting the process and the decision. Question 5. Market research demonstrates a significant shift in passenger preferences towards more sustainable travel options, potentially impacting Hainan Airlines' current fleet strategy and route profitability. Which of the following approaches best reflects Hainan Airlines' responsibility in responding to and communicating these findings? Option A. Disregard the market research findings as preliminary and not yet indicative of a significant market shift, continuing with existing strategic plans without public comment on the research. Option B. Issue a press release highlighting only the positive aspects of the market research, focusing on areas where Hainan Airlines already excels and downplaying the implications of the sustainable travel trend. Option C. Publicly acknowledge the market research findings, detailing the observed trends in sustainable travel preferences and outlining Hainan Airlines' commitment to investigating and adapting its long-term strategy accordingly, while also emphasizing current operational strengths. Option D. Base the company's public response on informal discussions with industry peers and internal speculation about future passenger behavior, rather than the formal market research data. Correct answer is C. Publicly acknowledge the market research findings, detailing the observed trends in sustainable travel preferences and outlining Hainan Airlines' commitment to investigating and adapting its long-term strategy accordingly, while also emphasizing current operational strengths. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Hainan Airlines, as a publicly listed entity, must adhere to stringent disclosure requirements and maintain market confidence. The pressure to present a positive outlook can conflict with the obligation to provide accurate and timely information to investors and the public. Careful judgment is required to balance commercial interests with regulatory compliance and ethical reporting standards. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective assessment of the market research findings, considering both positive and negative implications. This approach aligns with the principles of transparency and fair disclosure, mandated by relevant aviation regulations and securities laws applicable to listed companies in China. It ensures that Hainan Airlines' public statements are grounded in verifiable data and reflect the true market conditions, thereby upholding investor trust and regulatory integrity. An approach that selectively highlights only positive market trends while downplaying or omitting negative ones would constitute misleading disclosure. This violates the principle of providing a true and fair view, which is a cornerstone of financial reporting and corporate governance. Such selective reporting can lead to misinformed investment decisions and potential regulatory sanctions. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the market research entirely without a valid, documented reason. This demonstrates a disregard for potentially critical information that could impact the company's strategic planning and financial performance. It also suggests a lack of due diligence and a failure to proactively manage risks, which is contrary to sound business practice and regulatory expectations for listed companies. Finally, an approach that relies solely on anecdotal evidence or internal speculation rather than objective market research would be professionally unsound. This lacks the rigor required for informed decision-making and can lead to strategic errors. It fails to meet the standards of evidence-based analysis expected in a regulated industry. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes data integrity, regulatory compliance, and ethical considerations. This involves critically evaluating all available information, seeking expert advice when necessary, and ensuring that all public communications are accurate, balanced, and not misleading. The framework should also include a process for documenting the rationale behind significant decisions related to market assessments and public disclosures. Question 6. Comparative studies suggest that proactive identification and reporting of security vulnerabilities are critical for maintaining operational integrity and passenger trust. An employee at Hainan Airlines discovers a potential security flaw in the airline's passenger booking system that could inadvertently expose personal travel details. The employee is aware of the potential severity of such a breach. Considering the regulatory framework governing aviation and data protection in China, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the employee? Option A. Delay reporting the vulnerability until a comprehensive assessment of its impact can be completed and a solution is devised. Option B. Discuss the vulnerability with a few trusted colleagues in different departments to gauge their opinions on the best course of action. Option C. Immediately report the discovered vulnerability to the designated internal security team and relevant aviation regulatory authorities as per Hainan Airlines' established protocols. Option D. Attempt to fix the vulnerability independently to prevent any potential exposure before reporting. The correct answer is D. Attempt to fix the vulnerability independently to prevent any potential exposure before reporting. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Hainan Airlines employee due to the inherent conflict between commercial interests and regulatory compliance, particularly concerning passenger safety and data privacy. The need for careful judgment arises from balancing the airline's operational efficiency and potential revenue generation against the strict legal obligations and ethical responsibilities towards passengers. The correct approach involves prioritizing the immediate reporting of the security vulnerability to the designated internal security team and relevant regulatory bodies, as mandated by Hainan Airlines' internal policies and Chinese aviation regulations. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the potential risk to passenger safety and data integrity in a timely and compliant manner. Chinese aviation law and cybersecurity regulations emphasize proactive risk management and immediate notification of security breaches. By adhering to these protocols, the employee upholds their duty of care to passengers and the airline, preventing potential harm and avoiding severe legal repercussions for Hainan Airlines. This aligns with the principle of safety first, which is paramount in aviation. An incorrect approach would be to attempt to fix the vulnerability independently without reporting it. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it bypasses established security protocols and potentially exacerbates the vulnerability if the fix is incomplete or introduces new issues. It also violates reporting requirements, which are critical for regulatory oversight and incident response. Furthermore, it could lead to unauthorized access to passenger data, a direct violation of China's Personal Information Protection Law (PIPL). Another incorrect approach would be to delay reporting the vulnerability to await further instructions or to assess the full extent of the risk. This is a failure because aviation regulations and cybersecurity best practices demand prompt action upon discovery of a potential threat. Delay can allow malicious actors to exploit the vulnerability, leading to significant safety incidents or data breaches, and would be viewed as negligence by regulatory authorities. A third incorrect approach would be to discuss the vulnerability with colleagues not directly involved in security or IT without proper authorization. This constitutes a breach of confidentiality and could lead to the unauthorized dissemination of sensitive security information, potentially aiding malicious actors and violating data protection laws. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of Hainan Airlines' internal reporting procedures for security incidents and a thorough knowledge of relevant Chinese aviation and cybersecurity laws. When faced with a potential security vulnerability, the employee should immediately identify the appropriate reporting channel, document the discovery, and report it without delay, prioritizing safety and compliance above all else. If unsure about the correct procedure, seeking guidance from a supervisor or the designated security department is crucial. Question 7. Compliance review shows that a key pilot scheduled for a critical Hainan Airlines flight has presented a license that appears to be nearing its expiration date, with the renewal process reportedly underway but not yet finalized. The pilot is adamant about their qualification and the imminent renewal. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Hainan Airlines operations manager to ensure both regulatory adherence and operational continuity? Option A. Assign the pilot to the flight, relying on their assurance of ongoing renewal and the pilot's extensive experience to avoid flight delays. Option B. Allow the pilot to operate the flight with a written undertaking from them that the license will be renewed within 24 hours as a temporary measure. Option C. Proceed with the flight if the pilot's internal Hainan Airlines training records indicate they are proficient, as this demonstrates their capability to operate the aircraft safely. Option D. Immediately ground the pilot and seek official confirmation of their license status from the issuing authority before considering any flight assignment, even if it causes a significant delay. The correct answer is A. Assign the pilot to the flight, relying on their assurance of ongoing renewal and the pilot's extensive experience to avoid flight delays. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between operational efficiency and strict adherence to regulatory requirements for Hainan Airlines. The need to maintain flight schedules while ensuring all crew members meet stringent aviation safety and licensing standards requires careful judgment. Misinterpreting or overlooking these regulations can lead to severe consequences, including flight delays, regulatory penalties, and most critically, compromised flight safety. The correct approach involves a proactive and thorough verification process of all pilot licenses and certifications against Hainan Airlines' internal policies and the relevant Civil Aviation Administration of China (CAAC) regulations. This ensures that only fully qualified and authorized personnel are assigned to flights. This approach is right because it prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance above all else, aligning with the fundamental principles of aviation law and operational integrity. Specifically, CAAC regulations mandate that all flight crew members must possess valid licenses and certifications for the aircraft type and route they are operating. Hainan Airlines, as a certified operator, is responsible for ensuring this compliance before every flight. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the flight based on an assumption of validity or a verbal confirmation from the pilot without independent verification. This fails to meet the due diligence required by CAAC regulations, which place the onus on the airline to confirm the authenticity and currency of all pilot credentials. Another incorrect approach would be to delay the flight without attempting to resolve the discrepancy through official channels, such as contacting the issuing authority or Hainan Airlines' own records department. This demonstrates a lack of proactive problem-solving and could unnecessarily disrupt operations and passenger service without a clear regulatory justification for the delay. A further incorrect approach would be to accept a temporary or expired document as sufficient, which directly contravenes the strict requirements for pilot licensing and operational authorization under CAAC rules. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core regulatory requirement. They must then assess the available information against this requirement, seeking independent verification where doubt exists. If a discrepancy is found, the immediate priority is to resolve it through official channels or by consulting relevant departmental experts. Operational needs should only be considered after ensuring full compliance with safety and regulatory mandates. Question 8. Regulatory review indicates that Hainan Airlines is implementing new procedures for handling passenger requests during boarding to enhance service efficiency. A flight is experiencing a slight delay due to a technical issue, and a passenger with a documented mobility impairment requests assistance to stow their carry-on luggage in an overhead compartment, a task they are unable to perform themselves. Cabin crew is under pressure to close the doors and depart on schedule. What is the most appropriate course of action for the cabin crew member in this situation? Strictly adhering to Hainan Airlines operational guidelines and relevant Chinese civil aviation regulations. Option A. Politely inform the passenger that due to the delay and the need to close the doors, the crew cannot assist with luggage stowage at this time and suggest they ask another passenger. Option B. Inform the passenger that while the crew understands their situation, the current delay prevents any additional services, and they will need to wait until the next flight. Option C. Advise the passenger that such assistance is not part of the standard service and suggest they manage their luggage independently or seek help from fellow passengers. Option D. Immediately assist the passenger with stowing their carry-on luggage, ensuring it is done safely and securely, even if it means a slight further delay to the departure time. The correct answer is A. Politely inform the passenger that due to the delay and the need to close the doors, the crew cannot assist with luggage stowage at this time and suggest they ask another passenger. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Hainan Airlines employee due to the potential conflict between operational efficiency and adherence to specific aviation regulations concerning passenger safety and service standards. The need to balance timely departures with the imperative to comply with all stipulated procedures requires careful judgment and a thorough understanding of the regulatory framework. The correct approach involves prioritizing the passenger's well-being and regulatory compliance over immediate operational expediency. This means ensuring that all required safety checks and passenger assistance protocols are completed, even if it leads to a minor delay. This aligns with the fundamental principles of aviation safety and passenger rights as mandated by the Hainan Airlines operational guidelines and relevant Chinese civil aviation regulations, which place paramount importance on passenger safety and service quality. An incorrect approach would be to bypass or expedite safety checks to avoid a delay. This directly violates the core tenets of aviation safety regulations, which are non-negotiable. Such an action could lead to serious safety risks, compromise passenger trust, and result in severe penalties for both the individual and Hainan Airlines. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the passenger's request without proper assessment, failing to acknowledge the potential regulatory implications or the passenger's rights. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for established service protocols, potentially leading to passenger dissatisfaction and regulatory scrutiny. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core issue and relevant regulations. They must then assess the potential impact of each course of action on safety, compliance, passenger experience, and company reputation. When faced with a conflict between operational speed and regulatory adherence, the framework dictates that regulatory compliance and safety must always take precedence. This involves seeking clarification if unsure, escalating the issue if necessary, and always acting in accordance with the established policies and legal requirements. Question 9. Consider a scenario where a Hainan Airlines flight crew discovers a minor, non-critical anomaly with a piece of cabin equipment during pre-flight checks. The anomaly, while not immediately impacting flight safety, is not in perfect working order. The captain is under pressure to depart on time to maintain the flight schedule. What is the most appropriate course of action for the flight crew to ensure compliance with aviation safety regulations and company policy? Option A. Proceed with the flight as scheduled, making a note to have the equipment checked at the next scheduled maintenance opportunity. Option B. Report the anomaly to maintenance and ground crew for immediate assessment and rectification, accepting a potential minor delay to the flight. Option C. Inform the cabin crew to advise passengers that there is a minor equipment issue that will not affect safety. Option D. Attempt a quick, undocumented fix for the anomaly to avoid any delay to the flight. The correct answer is B. Report the anomaly to maintenance and ground crew for immediate assessment and rectification, accepting a potential minor delay to the flight. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Hainan Airlines employee due to the inherent conflict between operational efficiency and the strict adherence to aviation safety regulations. The pressure to maintain flight schedules can create a temptation to overlook minor deviations, but the paramount importance of safety in aviation necessitates unwavering compliance with all established protocols. Careful judgment is required to balance the immediate demands of airline operations with the long-term imperative of passenger and crew safety, as mandated by aviation authorities. The correct approach involves prioritizing the immediate reporting and rectification of the identified discrepancy, even if it causes a minor delay. This aligns with the fundamental principles of aviation safety management systems, which emphasize a proactive and transparent approach to identifying and mitigating risks. Specifically, this approach adheres to the regulatory framework governing aviation safety in China, which mandates that all safety-related issues, regardless of perceived severity, must be documented and addressed promptly to prevent potential escalation. This ensures that Hainan Airlines maintains its commitment to the highest safety standards and complies with the oversight requirements of the Civil Aviation Administration of China, COC. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the discrepancy or to attempt a quick, undocumented fix. This failure would directly contravene COC regulations that require thorough documentation and investigation of any potential safety issue. Such an action would also violate Hainan Airlines' internal safety policies, which are designed to foster a culture of safety reporting and accountability. Another incorrect approach would be to delay reporting until a more convenient time, which undermines the principle of immediate risk assessment and mitigation. This delay could allow a minor issue to develop into a significant safety hazard, leading to severe consequences for the airline, including regulatory penalties and reputational damage. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the regulatory requirements and internal policies. They should then assess the potential risks associated with the identified discrepancy, considering both immediate and long-term implications. The decision-making process should prioritize safety above all else, even if it means accepting a short-term operational inconvenience. Open communication with supervisors and relevant safety personnel is crucial to ensure that all necessary steps are taken in accordance with established procedures. Question 10. Strategic planning requires Hainan Airlines to consider its expansion into new international markets. Which of the following approaches best balances aggressive growth objectives with the absolute priority of regulatory compliance and passenger safety? Option A. Seek to leverage existing international partnerships to bypass some of the more stringent local regulatory requirements for initial market entry. Option B. Implement cost-saving measures in maintenance and crew training to maximize profitability during the initial phase of international expansion, assuming regulatory oversight will be lenient. Option C. Focus on securing significant market share rapidly by launching services and addressing regulatory compliance issues on a reactive basis as they arise. Option D. Prioritize obtaining all necessary regulatory approvals and conducting thorough safety system audits in each target market before commencing operations, even if this delays initial market entry. The correct answer is D. Prioritize obtaining all necessary regulatory approvals and conducting thorough safety system audits in each target market before commencing operations, even if this delays initial market entry. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for Hainan Airlines' strategic planning team as they navigate the complexities of international aviation regulations and market dynamics. The core difficulty lies in balancing aggressive growth objectives with the stringent safety and operational compliance mandated by aviation authorities, particularly when expanding into new international markets. Careful judgment is required to ensure that strategic decisions are not only commercially viable, but also fully compliant with the regulatory frameworks of all operating jurisdictions. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment and phased implementation strategy, prioritizing regulatory compliance and safety assurance above immediate market penetration. This aligns with the fundamental principles of aviation safety and the absolute priority placed on compliance by regulatory bodies worldwide. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit and letter of international aviation law, which mandates that airlines must demonstrate robust safety management systems and full adherence to local regulations before commencing operations in any new territory. This proactive and compliance-first stance mitigates legal, financial, and reputational risks, ensuring long-term sustainability and passenger trust. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on aggressive market share acquisition, without adequate prior regulatory approval or safety system validation, would be professionally unacceptable. This failure would directly contravene aviation safety regulations, which require thorough certification and operational readiness checks by the relevant aviation authorities before any new route or service can be launched. Such an approach risks severe penalties, flight suspensions, and irreparable damage to Hainan Airlines' reputation. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost reduction through potentially compromising on stringent maintenance schedules or crew training standards would also be a grave ethical and regulatory failure. Aviation safety regulations are non-negotiable, and any deviation, even for perceived economic benefit, directly endangers lives and violates the core duty of care owed to passengers and crew. This would lead to immediate regulatory intervention and severe legal consequences. Finally, an approach that relies on informal understandings or waivers from local authorities without formal documentation and certification would be highly risky and unprofessional. The aviation industry operates on a foundation of documented compliance and transparent oversight. Informal arrangements are not recognized by regulatory bodies and leave Hainan Airlines vulnerable to sudden and unpredictable enforcement actions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, identify all relevant regulatory jurisdictions and their specific requirements. Second, conduct a thorough risk assessment, factoring in compliance, safety, and operational feasibility. Third, develop a phased strategic plan that integrates regulatory approval and safety validation as critical milestones. Fourth, engage proactively with regulatory bodies, seeking clarification and ensuring all documentation is in order. Finally, maintain a culture of continuous compliance and safety vigilance throughout the strategic implementation. Question 11. The investigation demonstrates that Hainan Airlines' flight is scheduled for departure, but the ground crew reports a minor discrepancy in the aircraft's maintenance log, stating it is almost complete, but a specific signature is missing. The captain is under pressure from the airline's operations department to depart on time to avoid significant passenger inconvenience and potential financial penalties for Hainan Airlines. The captain has a verbal assurance from the ground crew that the missing signature is a clerical oversight and the maintenance itself is up to date. Considering the regulatory framework of the Civil Aviation Administration of China, COC, and Hainan Airlines' internal safety management system, what is the most appropriate course of action for the captain? Option A. Delay the flight indefinitely until the maintenance log is fully completed and verified by the appropriate personnel. Without exploring immediate resolution options, Option B. Refuse to authorize the flight until the maintenance log is fully completed, verified, and compliant with COC regulations and Hainan Airlines procedures, and explore all available options for prompt resolution of the documentation issue. Option C. Proceed with the flight after receiving verbal assurance from the ground crew that the maintenance is complete and the signature is a minor oversight. Option D. Authorize the flight to depart immediately, with a note to have the maintenance log fully rectified upon arrival. Correct answer is D. Authorize the flight to depart immediately, with a note to have the maintenance log fully rectified upon arrival. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between immediate operational needs and the long-term implications of regulatory compliance. Hainan Airlines, like any aviation entity, operates under strict regulations designed to ensure safety and operational integrity. The challenge lies in balancing the pressure to maintain flight schedules with the imperative to adhere to these regulations, especially when faced with incomplete information or potential deviations. Careful judgment is required to avoid compromising safety or violating aviation law. The correct approach involves prioritizing the thorough verification of all operational parameters and crew qualifications against Hainan Airlines' established procedures and the relevant Civil Aviation Administration of China, COC, regulations before authorizing a flight. This approach is correct because it upholds the fundamental principle of aviation safety, which is paramount and non-negotiable. By ensuring all checks are complete and compliant, it directly addresses the COC mandate for safe and regulated air travel, preventing potential incidents and legal repercussions for Hainan Airlines. This proactive stance minimizes risk and demonstrates a commitment to operational excellence and regulatory adherence. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding with the flight based on a verbal assurance from the ground crew, without independent verification of the maintenance log's completeness, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses established safety protocol and COC requirements for documented evidence of aircraft airworthiness. It creates a direct risk to passenger and crew safety by potentially overlooking critical maintenance issues. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay the flight indefinitely without attempting to resolve the documentation issue or seeking alternative solutions, while seemingly cautious, fails to demonstrate effective problem-solving and operational management within regulatory bounds. It can lead to significant operational disruptions and financial losses for Hainan Airlines without a clear justification for the indefinite delay if a resolution is feasible. Finally, an approach that involves authorizing the flight with a note to rectify the documentation later is a severe violation. This is an attempt to circumvent regulatory requirements and creates a false sense of compliance, directly endangering lives and exposing Hainan Airlines to severe penalties. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes a systematic risk assessment, adherence to established protocols, and clear communication channels. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue and its potential impact. 2. Consulting relevant regulations and company policies. 3. Seeking all necessary information and verification. 4. Evaluating available options against safety and compliance standards. 5. Making a decision that prioritizes safety and regulatory adherence, even if it incurs short-term inconvenience or cost. 6. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale behind it. Question 12. The analysis reveals that Hainan Airlines flight dispatcher is reviewing the pre-flight documentation for an upcoming international service. They notice a minor discrepancy in the fuel uplift calculation that, if corrected, would require a slight delay to the flight schedule. The dispatcher is under pressure to maintain punctuality. Considering the absolute priority of regulatory compliance and safety, which of the following actions best reflects the appropriate professional conduct for a Hainan Airlines employee? Option A. Make a verbal note of the discrepancy to be addressed after the flight and proceed with the current documentation to maintain the schedule. Option B. Proceed with the flight as scheduled, assuming the discrepancy is minor and unlikely to impact safety to avoid delaying the flight. Option C. Immediately halt the departure process, inform the captain and relevant authorities of the discrepancy, and initiate a full review and correction of the fuel calculation before any further action is taken. Option D. Adjust the fuel calculation based on a standard assumption for similar flights to expedite the process and avoid a delay. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the flight as scheduled, assuming the discrepancy is minor and unlikely to impact safety to avoid delaying the flight. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Hainan Airlines employee due to the critical nature of adhering to aviation regulations and internal company policies. The core difficulty lies in balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency with the absolute requirement for regulatory compliance, especially concerning safety-critical information. Misinterpreting or disregarding these regulations can lead to severe consequences, including flight delays, safety incidents, and significant legal penalties for both the individual and Hainan Airlines. Careful judgment is required to ensure all actions align with the stringent standards set by aviation authorities and Hainan Airlines' own operational manuals. The correct approach involves meticulously verifying the accuracy and completeness of all flight documentation against Hainan Airlines approved procedures and relevant COC, Civil Aviation Administration of China regulations before proceeding with any flight operations. This ensures that all safety-critical information, such as weight and balance calculations, fuel loads, and flight plans, is accurate and compliant. This approach is justified by the paramount importance of flight safety, which is enshrined in COC regulations and Hainan Airlines' operational philosophy. Adherence to these protocols prevents potential errors that could compromise aircraft safety and passenger well-being, thereby upholding the company's commitment to operational integrity and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over accuracy by accepting potentially incomplete documentation would be professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes COC regulations mandating thorough pre-flight checks and Hainan Airlines' internal safety management system, which requires all data to be verified. Another incorrect approach, which involves making assumptions about the accuracy of data without independent verification, is equally flawed. This bypasses established safety protocols and introduces a significant risk of undetected errors, violating the principle of due diligence expected of all Hainan Airlines personnel. Finally, an approach that seeks to circumvent established verification procedures to save time would be a severe ethical and regulatory breach, undermining the entire safety framework designed to protect lives and assets. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and compliance above all else. This involves a systematic review of all available information, cross-referencing against established procedures and regulations, and seeking clarification or additional verification when any doubt exists. The process should be one of diligent inquiry, ensuring that every step taken is in full accordance with the highest safety standards and regulatory requirements. Question 13. Risk assessment procedures indicate that Hainan Airlines is considering a modification to its flight scheduling software to optimize fuel consumption during long-haul flights. This modification aims to reduce operational costs. What is the most appropriate approach for Hainan Airlines to take in evaluating this proposed change, ensuring compliance with all relevant Civil Aviation Administration of China (CAAC) regulations? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes the proposed software modifications' effects on flight safety, operational procedures, crew workload, training requirements, and adherence to CAAC airworthiness and operational standards. Option B. Rely on the recommendations of a few experienced pilots who believe the modification will not negatively impact flight operations, without formal documentation or CAAC review. Option C. Implement the modification on a limited number of flights to observe its performance, without a prior formal assessment of potential regulatory implications. Option D. Proceed with the software modification immediately, as the potential cost savings are significant and the IT department has confirmed the software's technical stability. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes the proposed software modifications' effects on flight safety, operational procedures, crew workload, training requirements, and adherence to CAAC airworthiness and operational standards. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Hainan Airlines, as a regulated entity, must ensure its operational decisions align with the Civil Aviation Administration of China (CAAC) regulations. The core difficulty lies in balancing operational efficiency and cost-saving measures with the paramount importance of safety and compliance. A hasty decision without thorough impact assessment could lead to regulatory violations, safety compromises, and reputational damage. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that meticulously evaluates the potential consequences of the proposed change on safety, operational procedures, crew training, and regulatory compliance, all within the framework of CAAC directives. This approach is professionally sound because it adheres to the CAAC emphasis on proactive risk management and due diligence. By systematically analyzing all facets of the proposed change, Hainan Airlines demonstrates a commitment to safety-first principles and regulatory adherence, which are fundamental to maintaining its operating license and public trust. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate cost savings without a thorough impact assessment would be professionally unacceptable. This would represent a failure to comply with CAAC's stringent safety oversight requirements, which mandate that any operational changes must be rigorously evaluated for their safety implications. Such an approach could lead to unforeseen operational disruptions, potential safety incidents, and severe penalties from the CAAC, including fines or suspension of operations. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on anecdotal evidence or the experience of a few senior staff, without a systematic and documented impact assessment, is also professionally flawed. While experience is valuable, it cannot replace the structured analysis required by aviation regulations. This bypasses the need for objective data and formal validation, increasing the risk of overlooking critical safety factors or regulatory noncompliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured, multidisciplinary approach. This includes 1. Clearly defining the proposed change and its objectives. 2. Identifying all relevant CAAC regulations and guidelines. 3. Conducting a thorough risk assessment, including hazard identification, risk analysis, and risk evaluation. 4. Developing mitigation strategies for identified risks. 5. documenting the entire process and outcomes. 6. Obtaining necessary approvals from internal safety departments and, if required, the COC. 7. Implementing the change with appropriate monitoring and post-implementation review. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, compliant, and prioritize safety above all else. Question 14. To address the challenge of a minor but unlogged discrepancy found on a Hainan Airlines aircraft during pre-flight checks, which requires a specific part replacement that is not immediately available, what is the most appropriate course of action to ensure both operational continuity and strict adherence to aviation safety regulations? Option A. Proceed with the flight after a verbal assurance from the maintenance crew that the issue is minor and will be addressed on the aircraft's return, without formal documentation of the discrepancy or the planned rectification. Option B. Document the discrepancy, initiate the process for obtaining the required part, and delay the flight until the part is replaced and the maintenance is properly logged according to COC regulations and Hainan Airlines Safety Management System. Option C. Attempt a temporary, unapproved fix using available materials to ensure the flight departs on time, with the understanding that formal maintenance will be performed later. Option D. Dispatch the aircraft with a note to the flight crew to monitor the situation closely, but without any formal maintenance action or documentation of the discrepancy. The correct answer is B. Document the discrepancy, initiate the process for obtaining the required part, and delay the flight until the part is replaced, and the maintenance is properly logged according to COC regulations and Hainan Airlines Safety Management System. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Hainan Airlines employee due to the inherent conflict between operational efficiency and the strict adherence to aviation regulations, specifically concerning the documentation and reporting of safety-critical information. The need to maintain flight schedules can create pressure to overlook minor discrepancies, but aviation safety is paramount and governed by stringent rules. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing demands, prioritizing safety and regulatory compliance above all else. The correct approach involves meticulously documenting the identified issue, reporting it through the designated internal channels at Hainan Airlines, and ensuring that the aircraft is not dispatched until the issue is resolved and properly signed off by authorized personnel, in accordance with the Civil Aviation Administration of China (COC) regulations and Hainan Airlines' own safety management system. SMS. This upholds the principle of safety first and ensures that all maintenance actions are recorded accurately, providing a clear audit trail and preventing potential safety hazards. This aligns with the COC overarching mandate for aviation safety and the specific requirements for aircraft maintenance record keeping and defect rectification. An incorrect approach that involves dispatching the aircraft without proper documentation or resolution of the identified issue would constitute a serious regulatory failure. This bypasses established safety protocols designed to prevent the operation of unairworthy aircraft, directly violates COC regulations regarding aircraft maintenance and airworthiness, and would likely contravene Hainan Airlines SMS policies. Furthermore, failing to report the issue accurately and promptly undermines the integrity of the airline's safety reporting system, hindering proactive risk management and potentially leading to more severe consequences down the line. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to rectify the issue without following the prescribed maintenance procedures or without proper authorization, also presents significant regulatory and ethical failures. This could lead to improper repairs, further damage to the aircraft, or a false sense of security regarding the aircraft's airworthiness. It disregards the established hierarchy of responsibility and the need for qualified personnel to perform and sign off on maintenance tasks. As mandated by COC regulations, the professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a clear understanding of the regulatory framework COC regulations, Hainan Airlines SMS, a commitment to ethical conduct and safety principles, and the ability to communicate effectively through established reporting channels. When faced with a discrepancy, the professional should first assess its potential safety impact, then consult relevant documentation and procedures, and finally, report and escalate the issue according to company policy, ensuring that no aircraft is operated in an unsafe condition. Question 15. The review process indicates that a pilot candidate for Hainan Airlines has extensive flight hours, but a recent recurrent training session appears to be outside the stipulated time frame, as per the airline's operational manual, which is aligned with COC regulations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Hainan Airlines hiring team? Option A. Immediately disqualify the candidate due to the apparent lapse in recurrent training, as strict adherence to recency is paramount for flight safety. Option B. Proceed with hiring the candidate, assuming their overall experience compensates for the minor recency gap, and schedule the next recurrent training as soon as possible after employment. Option C. Conduct a detailed review of the candidate's training records and relevant COC regulations to determine if any approved equivalency or remedial training options exist to satisfy the recency requirement before making a hiring decision. Option D. Hire the candidate but require them to undergo a full initial type rating training again, regardless of their previous qualifications, to ensure all standards are met. The correct answer is B. Proceed with hiring the candidate, assuming their overall experience compensates for the minor recency gap, and schedule the next recurrent training as soon as possible after employment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in balancing operational efficiency with the stringent regulatory requirements governing aviation safety and pilot licensing within the specific framework of the Hainan Airlines hiring assessment test. The core difficulty lies in interpreting and applying the regulations concerning pilot recency and training requirements when faced with a candidate whose previous experience might not perfectly align with current standards, potentially creating a gap that could impact flight safety if not addressed correctly. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance without unfairly disadvantaging a qualified candidate. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the candidate's training records against the specific requirements outlined by the Hainan Airlines operational manuals and relevant Chinese Civil Aviation Administration (COC) regulations for pilot recency and recurrent training. This approach prioritizes safety and compliance by ensuring the pilot meets all mandated standards before being cleared for flight operations. The regulatory justification stems from the COC overarching responsibility to ensure the safety of civil aviation, which mandates strict adherence to pilot training and recency requirements. Hainan Airlines, as an operator, is obligated to implement these regulations rigorously. This approach demonstrates a commitment to professional integrity by placing safety above expediency. An incorrect approach would be to overlook or downplay the discrepancy in the pilot's recurrent training records, assuming their extensive flight hours are sufficient. This fails to acknowledge that specific, documented recurrent training is a regulatory mandate, not merely a suggestion. The regulatory failure here is a direct violation of COC regulations concerning pilot proficiency and recency, which are critical for maintaining operational safety. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify the candidate without a proper assessment of whether alternative, equivalent training or a specific remedial training plan could satisfy the regulatory requirements. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to explore all compliant avenues, potentially leading to the loss of a valuable pilot and an overly rigid interpretation of regulations that might allow for equivalency assessments under specific COC guidelines. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation. First, clearly identify the specific regulatory requirement that appears to be unmet. Second, consult the relevant operational manuals and COC regulations to understand the precise wording and intent of the rule. Third, assess the candidate's record for any documentation that might demonstrate equivalent training or experience. If a gap remains, explore the possibility of approved remedial training in consultation with the training department, and if necessary, the COC. This structured approach ensures that decisions are grounded in regulatory compliance, ethical considerations of safety, and a commitment to fair assessment. Question 16. What factors determine the appropriate course of action for a Hainan Airlines employee who accidentally gains knowledge of significant, non-public financial information that could substantially affect the company's stock price and is tempted to use this information for personal gain? Option A. The employee's personal relationships with individuals who might benefit from the information and the potential for reciprocal favors. Option B. The employee's seniority within Hainan Airlines and the perceived impact of the information on their immediate colleagues. Option C. The employee's understanding of Hainan Airlines' internal compliance policies and relevant Chinese securities regulations regarding insider information. Option D. The employee's personal financial needs and the perceived likelihood of being caught. The correct answer is D. The employee's personal financial needs and the perceived likelihood of being caught. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a Hainan Airlines employee because it involves a conflict between personal gain and the company's ethical standards and regulatory obligations. The employee is privy to sensitive information that could be exploited for personal financial benefit, creating a temptation that tests their integrity and adherence to professional conduct. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation without compromising their duties or violating regulations. The correct approach involves immediately reporting the potential insider information to the appropriate internal compliance department or supervisor at Hainan Airlines, as per the company's code of conduct and relevant aviation industry regulations in China. This upholds the principle of transparency and prevents any potential misuse of information that could impact market fairness or the company's reputation. Specifically, Chinese securities laws and Hainan Airlines' internal policies likely mandate the reporting of such information to prevent insider trading and maintain market integrity. This proactive disclosure ensures that the information is handled ethically and legally, protecting both the individual and the company. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the information or to attempt to profit from it. Ignoring the information could be seen as a dereliction of duty if the employee has a responsibility to report such matters, and it allows a potential breach of regulations to go unaddressed. Attempting to profit from the information constitutes insider trading, a serious offense under Chinese law, which carries severe penalties including fines and imprisonment, directly violates ethical principles of fairness and honesty, and breaches Hainan Airlines' internal policies designed to prevent such misconduct. Another incorrect approach would be to discuss the information with friends or family who might then act on it. This indirectly facilitates insider trading and still carries significant ethical and legal ramifications, as the employee would be complicit in the misuse of confidential information. It demonstrates a failure to uphold the duty of confidentiality and a disregard for the potential consequences for the company and the market. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a clear understanding of the company's code of ethics, relevant Chinese laws and regulations pertaining to financial markets and corporate conduct, and a commitment to acting with integrity. When faced with potential insider information, an employee should 1. Recognize the nature of the information and its potential implications. 2. Immediately cease any personal consideration of using the information for gain. 3. Consult Hainan Airlines' internal policies and procedures for reporting such matters. 4. Report the information through the designated channels without delay. 5. Cooperate fully with any subsequent investigation. This systematic approach ensures compliance, protects the company, and preserves the employee's professional standing. Question 17. Governance review demonstrates that a Hainan Airlines pilot, known to be experiencing significant personal financial difficulties, has been observed accessing passenger booking data outside of operational necessity and has made several unusual, large cash withdrawals. What is the most appropriate course of action for Hainan Airlines to take? Option A. Overlook the pilot's actions, assuming the financial difficulties are unrelated to their professional duties and that no actual data breach has occurred, to avoid unnecessary internal disruption. Option B. Immediately terminate the pilot's employment due to suspected misconduct and potential security risks without conducting a formal investigation. Option C. Immediately launch a confidential internal investigation into the pilot's access of passenger data and financial activities. Offer the pilot access to employee assistance programs for financial counseling, and consult with the compliance department regarding potential data privacy and security breaches according to Chinese aviation regulations. Option D. Confront the pilot directly and demand an immediate explanation for their actions, bypassing internal reporting procedures. Correct answer is C. Immediately launch a confidential internal investigation into the pilot's access of passenger data and financial activities. Offer the pilot access to employee assistance programs for financial counseling, and consult with the compliance department regarding potential data privacy and security breaches according to Chinese aviation regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate financial pressures of Hainan Airlines with the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations concerning passenger safety and data privacy. The pilot's personal financial distress could lead to compromised judgment, and the airline has a duty to ensure all employees act with integrity and adhere to strict operational and data handling protocols. Careful judgment is required to address the situation without jeopardizing safety, violating regulations, or unfairly penalizing an employee. The correct approach involves a multifaceted response that prioritizes regulatory compliance and employee well-being. This includes immediately reporting the suspected breach to the relevant internal compliance department and potentially external regulatory bodies, as per Hainan Airlines' internal policies and applicable Chinese aviation regulations concerning data security and passenger privacy. Simultaneously, the airline should initiate a confidential internal investigation to ascertain the facts of the situation, ensuring due process for the pilot. Offering the pilot access to confidential employee assistance programs or financial counseling services demonstrates the airline's commitment to supporting its employees while still upholding its responsibilities. This approach aligns with the ethical principles of integrity, accountability, and duty of care, and adheres to regulations that mandate robust data protection and safety oversight. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the pilot's unusual behavior and the potential data breach, prioritizing short-term operational continuity or avoiding immediate scrutiny. This failure to act would violate regulatory requirements for data protection and passenger privacy, potentially leading to severe penalties for Hainan Airlines and a loss of public trust. It also neglects the airline's ethical responsibility to investigate potential safety or security risks. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately terminate the pilot's employment without a thorough investigation. While disciplinary action may be warranted, an immediate dismissal without due process could violate labor laws and internal company policies. It also misses the opportunity to understand the root cause of the pilot's actions and to offer support, which could prevent future incidents. This approach prioritizes punitive measures over a balanced and compliant resolution. A third incorrect approach would be to confront the pilot directly and demand an explanation without involving the appropriate internal departments or following established investigation protocols. This could lead to an incomplete or inaccurate understanding of the situation, potentially compromise the integrity of any subsequent investigation, and expose Hainan Airlines to legal risks if the pilot's rights are not respected. It also bypasses the established governance structures designed to handle such sensitive matters. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Recognizing and escalating potential ethical or regulatory breaches through established channels. 2. Prioritizing safety, security, and regulatory compliance. 3. Initiating a fair and thorough investigation with due process. 4. Considering the well-being of employees while upholding organizational standards. 5. Consulting with legal and compliance departments to ensure all actions are compliant and defensible. Question 18. Compliance review shows that Hainan Airlines' current baggage handling procedures are experiencing delays, impacting turnaround times. To address this, a proposal has been made to streamline the process by reducing the number of mandatory checks at certain points, citing efficiency gains observed in other international airports. What is the most appropriate approach for Hainan Airlines to consider regarding this proposal? Option A. Postpone the review of the proposed changes until the current operational pressures subside, to allow for a more focused assessment. Option B. Conduct a detailed review of the proposed changes against Hainan Airlines operational manuals and all applicable national aviation regulations to ensure full compliance before any implementation. Option C. Adopt the proposed changes, assuming that international best practices from other airports are inherently compliant with Hainan Airlines' regulatory environment. Option D. Immediately implement the proposed changes to improve efficiency, as delays are negatively impacting operational metrics and passenger satisfaction. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed review of the proposed changes against Hainan Airlines operational manuals and all applicable national aviation regulations to ensure full compliance before any implementation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between operational efficiency and strict adherence to regulatory requirements, particularly within the context of aviation. Hainan Airlines, as a regulated entity, must ensure all processes, especially those impacting safety and compliance, are optimized without compromising the integrity of its regulatory framework. The difficulty lies in identifying process improvements that are not only beneficial for efficiency, but also fully compliant with the specific regulations governing airline operations in its jurisdiction. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine optimization and actions that could inadvertently lead to non-compliance or increased risk. The correct approach involves a thorough review of existing procedures against the latest Hainan Airlines operational guidelines and relevant aviation regulations. This approach prioritizes understanding the current regulatory landscape and identifying areas where processes can be streamlined or enhanced while remaining fully compliant. The justification for this approach is rooted in the absolute priority of regulatory compliance in the aviation industry. Any process optimization must first and foremost satisfy the stringent requirements set forth by aviation authorities and internal company policies. This ensures the safety of operations, the integrity of the airline's reputation, and avoids potential penalties or sanctions. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without a comprehensive regulatory impact assessment would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from prioritizing financial gains over safety and compliance, a direct contravention of aviation's core principles. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing changes based on anecdotal evidence or industry best practices from other regions, without verifying their applicability and legality within the specific Hainan Airlines jurisdiction, is also flawed. This overlooks the unique regulatory environment and could lead to the adoption of non-compliant procedures. Finally, an approach that delays necessary process reviews due to perceived operational burdens, thereby risking obsolescence of procedures and potential non-compliance, demonstrates a lack of proactive risk management and commitment to regulatory adherence. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the regulatory mandate. This involves consulting the official Hainan Airlines operational manuals, relevant national aviation laws, and any specific directives from aviation regulatory bodies. The next step is to identify process bottlenecks or inefficiencies. Crucially, any proposed optimization must then be rigorously assessed for its compliance with these identified regulations. This assessment should involve legal and compliance departments. If a proposed optimization appears to conflict with regulations, it must be either modified to achieve compliance or abandoned. The ultimate goal is to achieve efficiency gains through compliant means, ensuring that safety and regulatory integrity are never compromised. Question 19. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a new, slightly more efficient ground handling procedure for Hainan Airlines aircraft could reduce turnaround times by an average of 5 minutes per flight. However, this new procedure involves a minor deviation from the current checklist, which was established based on COC guidelines for aircraft servicing. The proposed change is estimated to save significant operational costs annually. What is the most appropriate course of action for Hainan Airlines operations management team? Option A. Proceed with the new procedure but instruct ground staff to be extra vigilant during the servicing to mitigate any potential risks. Option B. Implement the new procedure immediately to realize cost savings, as the deviation is minor and the benefits are substantial. Option C. Delay the implementation until a new COC directive explicitly permits such minor deviations in ground handling procedures. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment and safety review of the proposed procedure, consulting relevant COC regulations and Hainan Airlines safety management system before considering implementation. Correct answer is B. Implement the new procedure immediately to realize cost savings, as the deviation is minor and the benefits are substantial. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because Hainan Airlines, as a state-owned enterprise operating in a highly regulated aviation sector, must balance operational efficiency with strict adherence to Chinese civil aviation regulations and internal safety protocols. The pressure to optimize processes, especially in a competitive market, can create a tension with the paramount importance of safety and compliance. Making a decision that prioritizes cost savings over established safety procedures, even if seemingly minor, carries significant risks, including potential regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and most critically, compromising passenger and crew safety. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment, and a decision-making process that prioritizes safety and regulatory compliance above all else. This means that any proposed process optimization must first undergo rigorous evaluation to ensure it does not introduce new safety hazards or violate any regulations stipulated by the Civil Aviation Administration of China, CAAC. If the optimization involves deviating from established procedures, it requires formal approval through a documented safety management system process, which would include a detailed analysis of potential risks and mitigation strategies. This aligns with the CAAC overarching mandate to ensure the safety and regularity of civil aviation operations within China. An incorrect approach would be to implement the process optimization without a comprehensive safety review, especially if it bypasses existing safety checks or standard operating procedures. This could lead to violations of CAAC regulations concerning flight operations, maintenance, or crew procedures, potentially resulting in fines, suspension of operations, or other severe sanctions. Another incorrect approach would be to proceed with the optimization based solely on cost savings, without considering the potential impact on safety margins, even if the risk appears low. This demonstrates a failure to uphold the ethical responsibility of an airline to prioritize the well-being of its passengers and crew, which is a fundamental tenet of aviation safety culture. Professionals in this situation should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core objective, process optimization. This must be immediately followed by a comprehensive risk assessment, consulting relevant CAAC regulations, and Hainan Airlines' own safety management system. If the proposed optimization presents any safety concerns or regulatory ambiguities, the default position should be to maintain the status quo or seek alternative, demonstrably safe solutions. Escalation to safety and compliance departments for review and approval is crucial before any changes are implemented. Question 20. The risk matrix shows a potential gap in the implementation of Hainan Airlines' new passenger safety briefing protocol, with reports indicating that cabin crew members are not consistently demonstrating the emergency exit locations as mandated by the updated training manual. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the safety compliance officer? Option A. Conduct an immediate audit of all cabin crew members' adherence to the new briefing protocol, identifying specific areas of non-compliance and initiating targeted retraining for affected individuals. Option B. Issue a general reminder to all cabin crew about the importance of the new briefing protocol, assuming the deviations are minor and will self-correct. Option C. Instruct station managers to verbally remind their teams about the protocol, without formal documentation of the issue or corrective actions. Option D. Temporarily suspend the new briefing protocol until a more comprehensive review of its practicality can be completed by the training department. The correct answer is A. Conduct an immediate audit of all cabin crew members' adherence to the new briefing protocol, identifying specific areas of non-compliance and initiating targeted retraining for affected individuals. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because Hainan Airlines, as a regulated entity, must balance operational efficiency with strict adherence to aviation safety regulations. The risk matrix highlights a potential gap in the implementation of a new safety protocol, which could have serious consequences if not addressed proactively and correctly. The challenge lies in identifying the most effective and compliant method to rectify the situation, ensuring that safety standards are not compromised, while also considering the practicalities of airline operations. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the implementation process, identifying specific deviations from the approved protocol, and then implementing targeted corrective actions. This is justified by the paramount importance of aviation safety, which is governed by stringent regulations. Any deviation from established safety protocols, even if seemingly minor, can create vulnerabilities. A systematic review ensures that the root cause of the implementation issue is understood and addressed, preventing recurrence and maintaining compliance with Hainan Airlines' internal safety management system and relevant aviation authorities' guidelines. This approach prioritizes a data-driven and compliant resolution. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the identified risk as minor or to implement a superficial fix without understanding the underlying cause. Dismissing the risk as minor is a failure to uphold the principle of proactive safety management, which requires addressing even low-probability, high-consequence risks. Implementing a superficial fix without root cause analysis is a failure to comply with the spirit and letter of safety regulations, which demand robust and sustainable solutions. Such actions could lead to continued noncompliance, potential safety incidents, and regulatory penalties for Hainan Airlines. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of resolution over thoroughness, potentially leading to the implementation of a solution that is not fully compliant or effective. This demonstrates a lack of professional judgment and a disregard for the rigorous standards expected in aviation. Professionals should approach such situations by first acknowledging the identified risk and its potential implications. They should then engage in a structured problem-solving process that includes gathering information, analyzing the root cause of the deviation, evaluating potential solutions against regulatory requirements and operational feasibility, and implementing the most appropriate corrective action. Continuous monitoring and evaluation of the implemented solution are also crucial to ensure its effectiveness and ongoing compliance.